much. It's probably sweetheart of this discussion and part of the conference. Thanks to Paul for inviting me. So in terms of this paper, this chapter on the second wave of positive psychology, I thought I would bring in a little bit of a Western perspective. Just as a compliment to it, because I wanted to say that in the tradition, there is a tradition in Western culture that does respond to the same concerns, the same trajectory. So I'm in favor of the trajectory. I'm just bringing in a little bit of a Western tradition. So I'm talking about the transcendent turn to agape love. So in the West, according to Charles Taylor, I agree with him that there is a dilemma. There's a kind of horns of a dilemma between self-hatred and moral lobotomy. And I'll explain that in a minute. It's also called the crisis of affirmation. This is important. It's important to feel the angst of this. We should almost have a moment of pause and mourning for this crisis. It is something that bedevils the West. So it's very difficult for people to both affirm the self and affirm the world at the same time. Partly because most of us see there are problems in the world, there's brokenness, and it makes it very difficult to accept it. So the tendency is to move either towards being depressed, self-hating, or wanting to destroy the world, and we'll talk about that. So Taylor is sharp. He's very sharp on this in Sources of the Self. He talks about how the self and the good, or the self and morality, are deeply intertwined. And the morality, identity, and spirituality are interwoven. His proposal is a transcendent turn to agape love, which can provide a way out of this dilemma of guilt, shame, low self-esteem on the one hand, and the moral suicide on the other. And transcendence is a key factor here. It's a particular kind of transcendence. It's what Calvin Stragg calls T2 transcendence, or strong transcendence. And he speaks about this at the end of his famous tome, The Sources of the Self. And so maybe we'll just move on to that. So what I want to do with Charles Taylor, who's one of our Grand Français in Canada from McGill University, our great thinkers. In my PhD, I brought into dialogue Michel Foucault from Paris, the Parisian Grand Français, and Charles Taylor on the issue of the self. That's why I'm interested in this. So we want to offer a wager of transcendence as a route to mature happiness, as a cultural recovery project. So scenario one, according to Taylor, and he's looking through the eyes of Dostoevsky and the Brothers Karamazov, that famous Russian novel, Brothers Karamazov. He says the first scenario that we could try is to close ourselves off to grace out of self-loathing and loathing for the world. But this is so existentially painful that we tend to push the suffering, the evil away from ourselves and blame it all on someone else or on the world. So in this way, we have a way of justifying terror. So we cannot identify with evil and suffering. So that the tendency is to push it away from ourselves. And in a sense, that says, I'm justified if I want to commit terror, commit violence. And it tends to be rooted in pride as well, in arrogance, deceit, and resentment. So suicide for the noble, so I take myself out of the picture because I can't stand it, or terror for the ignoble. Scenario two is a radically different stance. We invoke the transcendent agape love. It allows us to love the world and itself at the same time, despite its brokenness and injustice. We accept that we are part of it, accept our part, our responsibility for evil and brokenness, which is kind of an epiphany or major miracle. The miracle comes through accepting love from others and from God. We open ourselves to grace and to this economy of grace. This moves us into humility, servanthood, other orientation, and hospitality. So I want to talk about agape as a life force of transformation. So this strong form of transcendence means that while such love comes from outside of human culture, it does have dynamic effects in all the culture spheres of science, the arts, and religion. The impact is really a kind of transformation, transfiguration and transformation. So there is a sense in which this move towards, this punt towards a transcendent turn to agape love actually brings about a transformation. So the self is receiver, but a receiver not of content, a proposition, or a truth, but a presence. The presence is power. Furthermore, this presence provides the inexpressible confirmation of meaning. So Taylor tells us that this actually changes our whole stance towards self and the world. And in other words, by being able to receive love from others and from God, we're able to change our whole outlook, our whole stance towards the world. That's a very strong language in Taylor, the idea of a stance. So there's a whole new orientation for the self, the encounter with the sublime, the sense of reorientation of our total self, our total moral outlook, our whole moral space, our internal moral values and priorities. But God's love is one active contemporary source of the good, the love of which has empowered people to do the good and exemplify the good in their character, social life, and politics. So this helps us to avoid this self-lobotomy through this transcendent turn. So he writes that the only way to escape fully the draw towards violence lies somewhere in the turn to transcendence. That is the full-hearted love of some good beyond this life. So we have a kind of resolution. Taylor hopes for a participation with the divine that returns to us to this world in such a way that we are able to fully embrace our deepest spiritual aspirations and fully to affirm the world, others, and ourselves without spiritual mutilation, without simply denying the reality of suffering and evil. This is considered the miracle of agape. As a thinker situated within the mainstream of Western culture, Taylor proposed a path to resolution of the crisis of affirmation, and it appeals to God, grace, agape, and there's no a priori reason not to judge its faults or misleading. So in conclusion, in the quest for mature happiness, I'm saying that in the quest for mature happiness and meaning amidst suffering and tragedy, the West is not without a response from its own philosophical, cultural, and spiritual tradition. Agape love, according to Charles Taylor, posits a stance towards self and the world that is morally courageous and life-affirming, enhancing the common good and promoting the well-being of the community. It offers to reduce violence, promote justice, and improve an individual's mature responsibility in line with mature happiness. It also offers the motivation to do the good that one knows about, addressing the moral gap problem. Taylor suggests the first question we should ask, this is important Taylor language, who do you love or what do you love, not what should you do. So that's where the motivation starts within. Okay, I think that's it for my presentation.
All right, thank you, Gordon. I think it's great to start off with this self-transcendence theory that you have presented in the light of the second wave. Yes, Paul?
Do you all know who Taylor is? Taylor is the winner of the Big Award, 10 Religious Award. He's the most famous philosopher in Canada, maybe in the world.
Thanks for that nice touch. All right. The next presenter is going to be Dmitry. Whatever you want.
All right. So, dear colleagues and friends, so the panel, the journal is a very important journal, so I use it as an opportunity to make some dialogical connection to what was said by different people during even during the previous panel and the panel yesterday. So I don't plan to give some content of my own, in particular, first of all, to what has been said during the yesterday's session by Paul and others. I had some ideas, some responses that were not spoken, some disagreements even. And this refers to the most general context of our work, to the field that unites all of us, to the way we work. So the talk was yesterday about existential skills, and I thought that it's some contradiction in this term, because what is existential cannot be some skills. Skills is some just habits that work on their own, and if we work in the existential space and the existential dimension, then we are to develop a feeling of our incompetence. Not just competence, on the contrary, only we can deal with some problem only in as much as we feel that we don't understand what is going on and we are to explore it. The feeling, the humility, the feeling of incompetence, the creative incompetence, the incompetence that produces the process of investigation, here and now, ad hoc. And this is this is the difference of existential approach from some other approach. Just this idea of creative incompetence and imperfection. Then we work not so much with some skills and techniques, but rather with our own personality as our main instrument. That's why to develop those capacities, to develop those instruments, and to help our clients, we are to show them the example of the way we do. We cannot learn them, we cannot teach them to behave this or that way if we don't behave this or that way ourselves. So, this motto about education and child rearing, that children anyway become like your children, so don't educate them, educate yourselves. Well, and this is true for psychotherapy and counseling. So we first start to educate ourselves, so to give an example of what we expect and what we hope as regards our clients to. Then the first point that is very important to distinguish, and that's rarely distinguished, is the distinction between the ideal and the reality. The ideal human and real empirical humans, because one of the very important mistakes being done not only by counselors and therapists, but also by politicians, say, just confusing the ideal person with the real empirical persons and treating real persons as if they were ideal persons. So it was a problem with classic humanistic psychology of 1950s and 60s, and in many other approaches. So we are to see the ideal picture and to see the way how we can approach the ideal picture and what is going on the way to this ideal picture. We can even speak about what I would call differential anthropology, that people may be qualitatively different. And this is due to the way to maturity, not all of them pass in full the full distance. So many people tend to move in this direction, but sometimes they stop at this or that place. It was perfectly depicted in the ego development theory by Jane Loevinger. Essentially, I think it's the best of developmental theories, because it shows how we get mature and we can stop at every step, at every level without moving further. So we need not necessarily go all the way. This is what happens empirically with empirical humans. because personality development after becoming a Dao is an optional thing, an optional process. We must not develop as persons. We must not grow measure after we become adult, pass the exams, get our ID and all the privileges of and duties of adult persons, and then we may keep developing and we may stop developing. The world of our days contains multiple possibilities of developing non-stop till our death, and contains multiple possibilities of non-developing at all anymore. So it's the optional thing, and psychotherapy is just a way to restore the stopped, the blocked development. So Jim Bugental said that essentially psychotherapy is just an attempt to pass again the stage of natural development that was not passed some time ago. Come back to it and go this way. And the most important point why many people stop and seize this moving along the way of personal maturation is because all human potential requires some investment of efforts. It's an energy-consuming way. If we relax, we can swim with the stream basing of our biological routines and social expectations. If we don't want to invest the efforts of our own, but if we want to move our own way, human way, specifically human way, then we are to invest energy, to invest effort. Many people, well, don't like investing any energy. They prefer the relaxed way. So this makes the difference in people with whom we work. We are to find the way, using also our own example, just to show that there are options. There is a choice. There is a choice to relax and to stay where you are, or to move to infinite multitude of destinations possible for you. So the whole world of possibilities. Staying with those, just responding to stimuli or moving along in this space of possibilities, those are two absolutely different, unequal options, but available potentially for everyone. The point is to find the value, to find the meaning in this energy investment, moving in the humane path of development and path of life, or the other way is just to swim with the stream. Quite evident options. And so if we choose the humane way, the way of effort, here we may find meaning as a resource to show us the way is this based on non-predetermined path. Meaning is something, well, as Frankl defined it, a possibility on the background of reality. So we will find this figure, we choose this figure, and so we define and we give shape ourselves to this way. Otherwise, if we stay within the predetermined path of biological or social routines, we also meet meaning on this path, but we meet the predetermined meanings, what Langley called, he distinguished existential meanings and, well, I forgot the second term. He used ontological and existential meaning. And ontological meaning is that it's absolutely evident, and we know, and someone gives us the exact answer, what to do and where to move. So it's not the matter. It's not about the quantity of meaning, the strength of meaning, but about the quality of meaning, because maximal meaning we find in fundamentalist terrorists. They have no doubts in their meaning. Well, but the point is that we are to keep our charge.
Thank you, Dmitry, for explaining the human tendency to grow and develop, and building the bridge between the last panel discussion and this one. I would like to give the word to Pninit. Pninit is someone who inspired me with her book, Meaning in Positive and Existential Psychology. And I'm really curious to hear what you have to share with us today.
Thank you, Seph. So I'm getting out of my comfort zone here. Usually I have slides. This time I was the only one who had slides last time. So this time I'm reading. So I want to present a simple idea, but as Voltaire once said, common sense is not that common. So I want to start with the search for meaning is as old as humanity itself. While meaning seeking has never been a simple task, it seems that the 21st century presents its own set of challenges, reflected in instability and disillusion of binding traditional frameworks. An abundance of choice which characterizes this era, a positive and benevolent process, has also turned out to be limiting rather than liberating. Processes of globalization, relativism, and individuation contribute to increased separation, fragmentation, and isolation of individuals, like atoms in space, eroding the sense of meaning. This ongoing crumbling process of human connection and dismantling grand meaning systems leave a void. This state of affair is especially highlighted in the experience of young people today, such as the millennial generation. Millennials receive a great deal of recognition for being the first purpose-driven generation. Popular media is flooded with headlines such as "The millennials work for purpose, not paycheck," and "Millennials seek for deeper meaning." At the same time, there has been an influx of attention given to the meaning crises, plaguing the millennial and iGen generation, who experience unprecedented levels of anxiety, depression, and a sharp decline in life satisfaction. When compared to previous generations, millennials have been characterized as less confident, more uncertain, more anxious generation. According to Erickson, the last question we ask in the final developmental stage of old age is, would it have been okay to have been me? Today's 20-somethings may be asking a variation of this question 50 years earlier. Is it okay to be who I am about to be? So in a way, while later life crises typically encompass newfound anxieties aroused by innovatively of death, quarter-life crises, as it's been termed recently, revolved around frustration of perceived lack of life meaning and pressure to live life fully without regrets. Essentially, such crisis of meaning is also a call for meaning, a call for connection. So millennials crave to belong to something greater than themselves. They crave to a bigger cause. Here I want to suggest the idea of a community of meaning as a potential anchor to facilitate in navigating today's ever-changing VUCA world. You know the term VUCA, which means volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. So a community of meaning, as I term that, requires both active attempts, as Dmitry mentioned, from the individual to express his or her unique footprints in a given community, and authentic resonance from the community to allow visibility to these footprints. Meaning is always embodied in a social, cultural, historical context, and as human beings, as social beings, our development as humans is always in a dialogue with and within community, real or imagined, in all different forms. Yet, a community does not a priori guarantee meaning simply by belonging to it. So we may have an affinity or connection to a community that is valuable to us, but without our active involvement, participation, and commitment, such affinity may weaken and eventually disappear. So it is not enough for it's not enough that a community, whether it is family, organization, school, art, or sport, they will be meaningful to us, but we must be also meaningful to it. This is manifested in the unique footprints and traces we create that are present and echo in this community. For example, the work of researchers stems from the fact that their field of interest is meaningful to them. But it does not stop there. They strive to be meaningful to the field as well. This is why they hold conferences. This is why they write articles. This is why they conduct research. So they want their footprints to resonate in this world, expand it, and become part of it. And at the end of the day, they want to contribute to its improvement. So the question thus is not what will motivate us towards affinity to a given community, but what will make us remain within it. So we will stay in a community that ensure us potential prosperity or recognition of our footprints. The more the individual and his or her footprints are visible and echo in a given community, the community becomes a powerful community of meaning for him or her. The problem of meaninglessness, as we have watched and listened the last couple of days, in a given community arises when we belong to a community that makes us feel insignificant, that makes us feel that our efforts don't matter. The result can be devastating and may lead to alienation and detachment. This is the terminal effect and an existential problem of invisibility among youth and subgroups today. Social invisibility may lead to disengagement, alienation, and even violence. A large part of problematic behaviors of youth in classrooms, for example, is merely a call for visibility, a call for community, a call for meaning. However, alongside the importance of the dialogue between the individual's unique footprints in a given community, a word of caution is warranted. We must keep in mind that to be meaningful, such efforts should focus on the real thing rather than an empty or false potential manifestations. We see this very clearly in the use of social media today, which functions as a contemporary arena for the search of meaning among youth and millennials. Friends and followers on social media have become our community. And our meaning is determined by the recognition of our footprints or posts that establish our unique identity in the virtual community. In such space of self-expression and acceptance that are determined by virtual popularity that is measured by the currency of likes, retweets, and number of followers, when our attempts for visibility fail, not getting enough likes or comments or shares, those who are more vulnerable in situations of social comparison are more likely to delete those footprints and feel alienated. The echo of one's own unique voice and identity is silenced, interpreted as meaningless and insignificant. Thus, the promise of authenticity is often disguised by mediated representations via flattering statuses, filtered photos, and an identity that is corrected in accordance to perceived expectations of others. This highlights the potential danger in confusing a symbol with the reality it symbolizes. Just as language exemplifies, the meaning of something is something beyond the thing itself. It is something that transcends it. The meaning of a word, for example, is not the sequence of letters or syllables, but what it represents. When we want to say a word, a text, or an act has no meaning, we say that they are pointing or denoting nothing. A sequence of letters that do not have anything beyond it is meaningless. Furthermore, static words can often be confused with the dynamic essence and experience they represent in reality. The Greek philosopher Heraclitus once said, "No man ever steps into the same river twice, for it's not the same river and it's not the same man. However, one can step into the name of the static label or of the river again and again." So the symbol labeled as trim may obscure its symbolized dynamic and unique meaning, to which we gradually became unintentionally blind. So we should not confuse likes with authentic visibility and recognition in the real world, nor should we confuse mediated self-representation with a community that allows us to reconnect with our daimon, our unique and unrepeatable self. At the same time, certain communities, such as gangs or cults, may present an external cause for which one feels that they should live or die, which can often be confused with a sense of meaning. In reality, however, they only offer an empty shell of significance, and they do not provide a platform for us to create or express our unique footprints that reflect our deep, authentic self. So I want to finish with one of my favorite Frankl's quotes. He says, questions about meaning of life can never be answered by sweeping statements. Life does not mean something vague, but something very real and concrete. In a fast-paced age of distraction, it's our opportunity and responsibility as scholars, as researchers, as therapists, as educators, as humans, to focus our attention to intentionally develop real, concrete communities of meaning. Thank you.
Thank you, Pninit. Thank you for bringing up this important topic of the meaning crisis. This is definitely something I would like to discuss with the other panel members as soon as everyone has got a chance to do their talk. Next up is Piers. Piers runs the MAP program at Bucks New University in London, and they have a really interesting way of getting the students engaged and getting the students to create their own meaning, so to speak, throughout their education. So, Piers.
Do you mind if I stand? I'm seated at ground level because at the Toronto conference I fell off the stage. So it seemed to be safer for me to be at ground level. In getting the brief from Paul on today's panel, Meaning in Life, he put a range of very challenging possibilities and topics into the program that you have. And in the best of ways, you didn't ask simple questions or small questions, you asked big ones. And I acknowledge you and in my esteemed company here that my work isn't immediately meaning, it's positive psychology in which meaning emerges. So I'm asking, so when I get the brief to come, as it were, and to talk, I'm going, so where do I fit in this? And so I'm going to talk you through how I work that out for myself. As you've just heard, I'm one of the course leaders on Masters in Applied Positive Psychology program. And when you think of teaching, to me, what you teach, while it's a skilled choice, it's the easy choice. The challenging choice, the exciting choice, is how you teach. And a dear colleague of mine, Matthew Smith, and I, we made a conscious choice right at the beginning that we wanted to know the goals of each student. And we wanted to relate to the goals of each student over time. So we were setting ourselves that challenge there that A, we could understand them, remember them, and relate to them over time, both to them as individuals, but when they came together as a group. So you can hear we're setting ourselves a challenge that when you're standing in front of a group, that you can kind of track what they might care about and what might be important to them. Now, because I can't see the note as well, it makes you go blurry, but that reduces my nerves a little bit, I think. So you can hear from what I'm saying, we set a commitment to the student. Now, the next thing we do is we record all our teaching material in advance. So the students have got the material, and when they come into the room, if they choose to come into the room, essentially, it isn't for us to stand there as teachers. It's for us to say, what do you think? And to watch what happens. Now, part of what's happening there is we are saying it is not our job as teachers to teach you mastery. It's you're sharing and you're finding it. So that's where we're working from. The final kind of piece of the puzzle for us was we set a subject for an assignment, but we give the students the choice of what to do in the subject. So we give them a structure on how they approach it, but we say it's your choice what you do. So essentially we've got the clarity of the goals, and we've given them the freedom to work and talk together. We're giving them the freedom to do an assignment in the way they wish. So I think you can hear from that, it's a supported environment, and it's, in our terms, it's freedom to explore. Now, that's what we did, and I think it was intuitive rather than conscious. Now, of course it was conscious, but it was intuitive. Now, those of you know the work of Carl Rogers, and particularly a book called Freedom to Learn, it may sound as if we were being awfully clever. We weren't. We were doing what we naturally wanted to do. But if you go to Rogers' Freedom to Learn, that's actually what he's talking about. Creating an environment in which people are invited and free to learn. Now, I'd take one ambitious step further than that. If you know Erich Fromm's definition of unconditional love, it's about the willingness to let someone be whoever they most need to be and are traveling towards being. And you see, I think, again, perhaps intuitively, we wove that into the teaching environment. Now, okay, so this is the backdrop against which I've worked out for myself, I think, trying to work out, you know, what Paul asked. And we see initially, when we give the students freedom, they're exploring it from ways they're socialized to explore, whether that's upbringing or culture or something like that. But with time, and it's usually not much time, you see progressive, gradual movements towards their own authentic, intrinsic perceptions. Their own questions, their own meanings are emerging. They have a growing trust of their own questions and meanings. They have a quality of personal awareness that grows through that. And what we think we see is an acceptance, a self-acceptance that appears through that as well. You see, I see my job in teaching as easy because I'm standing at the front letting this happen. It's just, my job is to actually make the containers help. So now, what I do in relating to what Paul said about, you see, I think we see existential positive psychology. In your wonderful 3-part diagram, I think we see positive psychology and second-wave positive psychology start to weave themselves together. And I think your 3-part diagram, which I saw last year for the first time, I think that's brilliant, because actually that's where I think I witness the students living. They aren't just focusing on the positive, they're focusing on the weave of life that is the mix. Now, to give you an example where, you know, in 2 of our 5 cohorts, a proportion of the cohort, family members were dying. And people were saying, we don't think we should be here because we can't be positive. We were saying, please be with us, let us care for you, and let us help you learn while you are with the dying. So you see that the weave, 2 things coming together. We think we see a congruence that comes. We feel we're trying to mirror it as tutors, because we Was that a T? Was that my good? Okay. No, I sort of, you can hear I'm trying to, no, that is just fine. We hold a congruence, which is we know the subject, but we have no idea at all what's going to happen in the room when we walk in. So there's part of it where we're so nervous, but we're containing the nerves. And then we watch them being congruent and more aligned in what they do. So if you know Carl Rogers' work, if you know the definitions, for example, of a fully functioning person, openness to experience, existential living, organismic trusting, experiential freedom, creativity, we believe we see that happening in the assignment work. When we've given them the freedom, I would say 50% plus of the students, they take the freedom and they run with it. So we're seeing a realness, being who one is, expressing one's own feelings, self-direction, pride and confidence, valuing oneself. Now, this is where I would then wind back to the brief in the program and to Paul's questions. You see, I think we start to witness self-transcendence. We start to see people living polarity, accepting polarity, finding a way of merging and weaving polarities together. We see to then, it doesn't have to be a positive world or a negative world. It's a both world. It's a both and world. That the meaning crisis is actually living it. Something of that nature. We see them absolutely willing to have the light side and the dark side, and both sides. So I'm saying what I believe I'm witnessing. I take stand back, watch. Do I genuinely see what I believe I'm describing to you? I do. And I think it comes through the Rogerian Carl Rogers principles. We accept them for who they are. We trust them. We believe in them. It is a form of love. We give them permission and they take it. And that is just
Thank you, Piers. Again, I think it's interesting to see what this sense of autonomy that you inspire in people, how that relates to meaning, and maybe also the meaning crisis. Before we continue to Yukun, there's a great Frankl quote. He was interviewed, I believe it was in the early 70s. And he was asked, Dr. Frankl, what do you make of the success of your book, Man's Search for Meaning? And he was actually quite depressed by his success, because he said if so many people grasp this book that sold title promises to give some answers around meaning, it must be a question that's burning underneath their fingernails. And I think nowadays, maybe it's not just burning under their fingernails, but underneath people's whole skin. So we'll see if we can find some kind of answer resolution to that later. But first, Yukun.
Thank you. You can show them here? Can show them? No, you are here. So I'm going to explain why people is different. Okay? Make sure get a message. Okay? This young man says something very profound. What's the dilemma? So, affirmation and what? Okay. Now, here is a fundamental dilemma. Okay. On one hand, I hate myself, but the Chinese accent, I cannot speak proper English. And I'm ugly. I'm short. And I self-loathing, right? Self-loathing. I'm not as smart. I feel like looking studying. In the movie star, I wish I had his look. Okay? Don't embarrass you. So, self-loathing. I'm not good enough. I'm always told, oh, no, you're not positive enough. Or your English is not perfect enough. You're not good enough. Okay? That's the message. So, what do we do when people self-loathing? When they hate themselves, they sometimes hate other people, right? You don't like me, I don't like you. Even. Or hate the world. The world's not fair. I'm such a kind-hearted person, but nobody likes me. I believe worms. Self-loathing. Second part, the other side part is self-affirmation. Okay? Self-affirmation. I'm smart. I'm good. I'm wonderful. Self-affirmation. So we are torn between these two forces. Most people psychologists say, you're good, you're character strength. Oh, you're a good person. Life affirmation. Psychology. Second way say, no. That's being stupid. You think you're so hard, you're not that hard. Second way say, you learn to accept yourself in spite of your brokenness. You accept yourself in spite of your limitations. How do you do that? Acapella. God loves me. Life is unique. Life is precious. So if I learn to affirm myself in spite of my limitations, that's true positive. Okay? That's much better than I'm great, I'm the best man. That's nonsense. Self-deception. First one. They call mature affirmation, right? I accept myself in spite of my brokenness, in spite of my failure, in spite of my accent, in spite of my ugliness. I accept myself. Okay, got that? The second kind, the part psychology one say, oh, the world's good, the world's beautiful, look, nature, this and that. That's silly. Sorry about that, okay? They tell Marty that, tell my cinnamon that. You know what silly? Look how the suffering all around us. The refugees, the cancer patients, the earthquake patients, a war here and there. The world horrible, full of evil, full of suffering. Second way possible to say, the world horrible. The world full of evil. But there's hidden beauty everywhere. Right? The hidden beauty everywhere. The word horrible, yet lovable. They call resilient acceptance. I will bet with cinnamon or any psychologist. I say, my training will produce people who are more resilient. You know why? Because they are really accepted that they are bad, they work bad, they're imperfect, and yet they are firm. If they're able to do that, then all else will fall in place. If you hate yourself and yet go through this positive kind of program, you actually hate yourself. All the things you learn, it can help you. You don't love yourself. That's why I met so many positive. A lot of people that's so nasty. It's so nasty. But they haven't learned how to love themselves and love other people. The third thing I want to talk about is worldview. Okay, pluralism. Okay, all people have different cultures. Dutch, British, Israel, Moscow, Canadian, China, a mixture of everything. I'm not. So they all have different cultures, have different values, have different worldviews. We cannot have a psychology all based on Western value, Western worldview, especially materialistic positivist worldview. Post-materialistic worldview saying that the only thing matter is matter. And Chinese people believe in qi. What is qi? What's qi? Qi is not visible. Chinese medicine based on qi. And Qigong master can blow you away without touching you. That's real, it works. But this is not visible. So we believe that is invisible. The invisible world is more real than visible. So if you only go by the visible, then your narrative will be flat and narrow and no depth. If you want to be a deep person, you go deep and you go high. Thank you.
Thank you. First, I want to thank Paul for inviting me to this summit. I hope it's working this time. Yeah, good. So I'll talk about some small research we did in China using the big data methods. So basically, we collected the data from Weibo. It's a Chinese version of Twitter, since Twitter, Facebook, Google are blocked in China. So we collected all the 2013 and 2016 data, which has more than 59 million active users and more than 100 million posts every day. So it's a huge amount of data. We actually did this based on the PERMA model of Martin Seligman, so that we measure well-being from 5 pillars, which is positive emotion, engagement, relationship, meaning, and accomplishment. They did some research actually based on this approach in Twitter and Facebook by Schwartz and also some other fellows from Martin Seligman's lab. They found some meaningful results. For example, they found that how people express their well-being on Twitter can predict the cardiovascular diseases in the county level, etc. And also they found that how people talk on Facebook can predict their personality. So what we did was we took their lexica and translated, kind of localized, let's say, not translated. Because some words, some English words were converged into one Chinese word, and some English words we have to use 2 Chinese words to correspond to it. But yeah, anyway, so we end up with a lexica with 1,407 words. So these are some examples, the positive emotion. For example, when people say nice or cheerful, this is positive. But when they say annoying or painful, that's negative emotion. And same thing for engagement, relationship. This is meaning. When they say meaningful, this is meaning. But also when talk about spirit, that's meaning too. And when they say pointless or hopeless, that's a negative for meaning. So, and also for accomplishment. And eventually we have this kind of lexicon. And oh yeah, how we calculate it? We take the data, we took the data from Weibo, the company. So we worked with them. So we have the privilege to access all their data. And we did the natural language processing on it. First, word segmentation, so that we separate each words and then match the words to these keywords. Of course, we did some processing too. For example, if there's a not, like I'm not happy, then this word will be a negative emotion rather than positive emotion, etc. And then we take the ratio of positive words to negative words to calculate the value of that dimension. For example, if in Weibo someone say 100, let's say 100 positive words, 50 negative words, then his value is 2 on that Weibo. So basically, we took the 2013 data and aggregate them based on dates, so that from the first day to the last day. As we can see, when people having holidays, they're pretty happy. Especially the highest one the whole year is the Chinese New Year. But this is also because people say Happy New Year all the time, so it's kind of like diluted. But anyway, we can see something smaller, but it's happening. For example, this one. I'm sorry, this one. This is when a soccer team, football team, but soccer team from Guangzhou won the Asian Club Championship. So we can see this small peak. But all the others are the holidays. But of course, people are happier in holidays anyway, because you got vacation, you got reunion with family, etc. But the interesting things are the, let's say, the low points rather than the peaks. So the lowest one in 2013 was on April 20th, when there was a huge earthquake in Sichuan province, which killed like tens of thousands of people. So as we can see, naturally, that one was the lowest point. People expressed their sadness on Weibo. However, if we look at the relationship, that day and the second day, that day itself is actually the highest. It's higher than the Chinese New Year and the other. This is a weird day that when a lot of pop stars say, kind of reveal their engagement and marriage and romantic relationship, etc. But basically, this is the highest point of relationship in Earth in the whole year of 2013, and also meaning. Meaning is pretty straightforward. So this is the single highest pike of meaning in 2013 on Weibo. And in contrast, it looks like people actually don't talk too much about meaning in holidays. All these holidays, the let's say New Year, Chinese New Year, and some other holidays got pretty low in meaning. So it looks like when people are happy, they talk less about meaning. But when a tragic event happened, they talk more about meaning. So this is a kind of study based on time. And then we also did something else in 2000. We took the, last year, we took the 2013, 16 data, and also some data from the National Bureau of Statistics of China, so that this time we want to look at the characteristics of PERMA, of people, based on their geography, based on where they're from. And we found something interesting too. So basically, first we looked at their how their well-being look like. This well-being is like a composite of all the PERMA, so we put them together. And we can find that this is a inverted U-shape relationship between the log of GDP per capita and well-being. So basically, it's money. So the relationship between well-being and money here is a inverted U-shape, which means you don't want to be too poor, but if you are too rich, if your city is too rich, it doesn't help your well-being too much, at least from what we've measured from social media. It's the cities in the middle, not that rich, not that poor, that exhibit the highest level of well-being on social media. And similarly, the size of the city, this is a logarithm of population, the population size, total population. And so the two of the biggest cities in China, Beijing and Shanghai, are here. As we can see that both of them are below the average of Chinese cities' well-being. And the shape is also inverted U shape, so that the middle is about the well-being of middle-sized city is highest. But interestingly, the 5 elements of well-being don't behave the same thing here. Just like the previous study, we found that the biggest contribution to this relationship actually is, positive emotion, relationships, accomplishment, etc. Meaning don't really fit into that model. In other words, yes, people are happier maybe in the more middle-sized. The income and the size of the city impacts people's, have a relationship with the positive emotion, engagement, accomplishment, and a relationship, but don't have a relationship with meaning. Meaning don't seem to be varying with the GDP per capita and population size. But do meaning correlate to anything? Yes. We found that it correlates with the percentage of green space in a city. So this is the graph, and we used some different models to fit it, and we found that they're pretty similar. So we just used the linear model, and we found that this is the correlation. As we can see that the green space is correlated to all of the 5 pillars of well-being. So that means in that case, meaning probably has something to do with whether a city has enough green space for its dwellers. So basically our research found that, at least from what people talk about on social media, do they talk about I'm happy, or I'm working hard, or I have a lot of love relationships with other people, or I talk about, meaning of life, philosophy, or, what makes life worth living for. So those pillars are different, and meaning seems to be the most unique one, seems to be the outlier. It's quite unique, it's distinct from for other constructs. And this actually reminds me particularly a question that Ken Sheldon raised this morning when he was here in the summit, that do Chinese people, benefit from suffering? And from our research, looks like so. But of course, this is not a direct evidence. This only shows that people talk more about meaning, and they talk more about relationship in the after a tragic event. And but we also know that there's a research in the United States, for example, after September 11th, the character strength of people actually increased in gratitude, spirituality, teamwork, love, etc. So this is actually consistent with our work. Looks like this is universal across cultures. So this is the small research that I want to share with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Yukun. One of the things that comes to my mind, at least when I see the results as you presented them, is that maybe it's more difficult for meaning to correlate with any of the other factors of the Burma model, because there is a definitional problem as well, right? What is meaning? How do people understand meaning? And time again, we see that people do not understand the word meaning in the same way. So besides this issue, I think what's also interesting to take a look at is the meaning crisis that has been reported and that has been growing over the, well, at least over the past couple of decades, I would say. So I'm very interested to ask some of the more older and wiser panel members here what the most apparent change has been, and then specifically that you see in youth maybe when it comes to their sense of meaning in life. Can I start with you, Gordon?
I do think this is a tremendously important question, and Paul and I are addressing it to some extent tomorrow in the talk about Jordan Peterson and the 12 Rules for Life, because I believe that he is connecting with this crisis of meaning in millennials. I'm very happy to hear about the discussion about millennials, and it does seem to be something quite intense at the moment. I haven't got the graphs to show you how much it has increased, but there seems to be something we can call a bit of a crisis in meaning, and it relates a lot to things like the loss of heritage, loss of story, the illiteracy with respect to their culture and their history. And I think that they feel much more alone. And one other thing I would point out is what Matthew Crawford said in The World Outside Your Head. He said that if morality has deteriorated to moral subjectivism, then these young men and women don't have anybody else in there. They don't have those moral interlocutors that tell them that they're doing okay. So who steps in as the moral interlocutor? It's the corporation. So workaholism and workaholism anxiety, performance anxiety is intensified beyond what we've ever had before. It's because the corporation took over where the culture failed on giving meaning through moral and spiritual guidance.
Okay. Accepted. You see, I never cared about the formulation of meaning, theory of meaning. What was important for me is just feeling that what I'm doing is meaningful. Why is it meaningful? I didn't care much about it. The point is that you are to seek for your meaning. But there is a saying that trust those people who are seeking truth and don't trust those who claim that they have found it. The same about meaning, and when you meet Buddha on your way, kill him. So the point is to seek meaning and not just to come to the point when you can say that you have found it. No, that's awful. Leo Tolstoy, in his most influential book, Confessions, that was probably the first philosophical account on the problem of meaning in life at all. Well, he just started with the trying to find the formulation of what life should mean, and what should be the meaning of life, and then to live his life according to it. And then at the end, he came to the idea that what matters is that your everyday life and all your actions were meaningful, not just some global idea. And so that's the point is how you feel, what you do daily, how you feel daily, whether you feel that what you do is in some direction that you feel is right. And I have this feeling that what I'm doing goes in the right direction, and don't care about the formulation of it.
I'm going to try a different angle. I've worked in a university now. I'm 66 years old. I've worked in the university now for 15 years. And what I believe I see more constantly than anything is young people terrified of making a mistake, terrified of being seen to be wrong. At the same time, the polarity is how many of them are actually incredibly talented. So it's this paradox, this tension between being afraid to make a mistake while they're able. So I had an intuitive sense when I was about 55, so I'm going back about 10 years. Actually, while I do multiple types of work, I actually have only one job, and the job is to love. The job is to mirror what I see in the young people. So that is to actually give them a mirror of their talent, their qualities, their questions, to give them some feedback that says what quality they have. At the same time, being willing to make mistakes myself. Because if I'm willing to make a mistake, it gives them permission to make a mistake. You see the distinction there? The humanity of it. If I can be human, they've got permission to be human too, as they make mistakes. So that's my sense of the meaning crisis. It's there. And actually, we've got to take a stand on mirroring and caring for young people in crisis.
First, I hope Dmitry was not offended when I said I'm not old enough, because I just realized that there's probably a cultural difference here. So in China, when I say I'm not old enough, this is a compliment because old is kind of respected in China. So I'm saying I'm humble. Yeah, right. So I'm not privileged enough to speak before other people. And actually, when I sat here and I saw Piers sat there, I was like, gee, that's a mistake, because I should have let you sit here and I sit there. But yeah, I know. But yeah. Yeah. So, but anyway, so I'm just trying to say this is kind of like meaning difference too in being old or being young. So we're actually doing something about meaning to the young people in China as we are rolling out positive education programs in China. So it's pretty easy for us to do something else, for example, positive emotion or engagement or accomplishment. But when we come to meaning, we're like, how to teach meaning or how to help kids grow meaning? It's almost impossible. So we decide to interview kids first, the elementary school kids. And their answers were like, meaning of life is to play games every day, or meaning of life is to make a lot of money. So meaning of life is to become rich, famous, etc. Really, seriously. But first, we can see that they didn't really get what's the meaning of meaning. They didn't get the idea. But secondly, we found that we shouldn't worry too much about it because research showed that young people don't get too much on meaning anyway. And the third is, so it's like increasing part. That's why, in Chinese culture, we kind of respect old people more because they have more wisdom and they know the meaning of life more than young people. And the third is that we found that we cannot kind of teach the meaning of life to kids directly. Because first, they don't understand the concept. And secondly, there are just too many so-called political education, which is kind of like ideology education in China, which teaches, meaning of life is just to devotion to the country or to group, etc. So what we were trying to do is just to teach them to pay attention to their daily life, their connections to other people, gratitudes, and what they really enjoy doing, etc. So that we hope that eventually they can find meaning from those exercises, from this awareness, rather than just teaching them the abstract concepts. and we don't know how it works yet because we just started. But hopefully, we hope that we can find a new way of helping kids to find meaning in life, in the daily mundane life.
I wanted to add something, as I am also trying to promote meaningful education. And we actually developed a questionnaire for children in elementary school, which we found the children do seek, they do search for meaning. They are occupied with questions of meaning, but sometimes we don't speak their language. We kind of bottom up rather than, top down rather than bottom up. So I think, and trying to complement what you just said, and Dmitry, I think we need to mirror that in the way we are. So in a way, I feel that sometimes rather than complicate things, we should just leave that. I hear a lot from, as I mentioned in my very, very brief introduction, I see a lot and I hear a lot of students, a lot of employees, a lot of patients, a lot of people say, I don't feel that I'm being seen. I don't feel that I'm being heard. So I think there's a beautiful movie, Avatar, I don't know if you know. Rather than saying, I love you, they say, I see you. I think that's a lot to be seen in our world of distractions, of our fast, paced world. Somebody stops and see your efforts. And I see that many of the problems in schools, in our classrooms, begin when children feel they're not being seen. And another thing I wanted to add, in addition to a loss of tradition, a loss of everything mentioned, I think we're also missing, the millennials, in essence, we're missing challenge. Frankl mentioned the noetic tension rather than homeostasis. We need heterostasis. We need attention, healthy tension to grow. I feel we don't have it anymore. Everything is very ready-made, kind of instant. So this is why I wanted to add to the importance of education.
Thank you. Yeah, I would like to add something to that actually. And we've been talking about the human tendency to grow, and perfectionism or unhealthy perfectionism also came up. So I think especially as a practitioner, it's really important not just to help a client grow, but to try to find out what place that client is coming from in their quest for growth. So what is it coming from a place of I'm not good enough, I need to fix this, that's why I'm seeking help, that's why I'm here in your office. And if so, be very mindful of that you're not helping them on this journey that maybe they're not supposed to be on in the first place. That's something that came to mind. Now I would actually like to involve all of you. If anyone has a pressing question or something that you would like to say. Yes.
First of all, thank you very much, panel, for everything you said. To hopefully not beat a dead horse, I'm a high school teacher. I teach grade 12 English, and hopefully this isn't redundant based on the answers you just gave. But I'm very interested in this idea of meaningful education, and I know being at this conference has really given me a lot of ideas as to how I can bring this practice into my classroom and hopefully update my own teaching pedagogy. For example, I'm teaching Man's Search for Meaning in my grade 12 English class next year, and I'm wondering what other sort of pedagogical steps you think teachers themselves can take and educators can take at the high school level to perhaps integrate more of these meaningful or perhaps existentially oriented ideas to youth so that they perhaps are more meaning literate or have a better vocabulary for meaning as they go out into the workforce. Thank you.
Yes.
Tomorrow I'll be speaking more about meaningful education. So I have lots of intervention as well as assessment if you would like to, and I can, because it's not like a 1 minute answer, but I salute you for that. I think it's so important that we begin as early as possible, even as a preventive kind of for meaning crisis in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, so I can share some of our activities that we do. Basically, we kind of found that it's difficult to talk about meaning in life, especially in China, because we don't have much tradition of religion and faith, and most people are atheists. Actually, this is the kind of time out. Okay, so anyway, so what we are trying to do is find the meaning in the mundane life. So basically, we ask this: what's the meaning of learning? For example, you are learning, but why? Because I want to go to a good college, or because I want to make my parents proud, or because learning is fun, etc. Or, we ask, what's the meaning of your sports exercise, etc. So we are trying to guide them find meaning in their mundane daily life instead of the big M of life question. Yeah.
Just one comment on that. We all know about education as terror, and many of us have children, and they've been through classrooms where it has been very, very unpleasant, whether they're demeaned by the teacher, etc., or it's just so boring, it's painful. And I think we need to address that kind of question as well, how to encourage teachers to be more creative in the classroom and create a joyful experience, because we know from neuroscience that if the experience in the classroom is positive, the children's brains light up. And if the experience is terror or negative, their brains really shut down. So I think that's one of the issues we could talk about as well.
I'd like to speak directly to that. The same issue of lack of challenge I found to be provocative in that it's also been argued that this is an extremely challenged generation, one that has to work the hardest to earn a respectable living, housing, stuff like this. And so I suggest that rather than an absence or a surfeit of challenge, there's a miscalibration of it in that maybe more than ever we are trying to manipulate the level of challenge in a clumsy way. We are reducing our standards for education to the point where the talented children outperform the point that education is boring and meaningless. I was talking here. And then there are, those who can't meet these standards nonetheless because of their unfortunate circumstances that make these, lowered standards still inapplicable. And so I wonder if a way of addressing this concern about appropriate challenge is partly a matter of respecting individual differences.
All right, I think we need to wrap up our conversation here. Is there anyone who would like to briefly speak to the last question?
Very briefly, my answer to that question would be Csikszentmihalyi's work on flow, which is balancing challenge and skill. Constant balance, so it's constant attention, constant adjustment, constant attention. That's my quick answer. It's not an easy answer. As we finish, can I say thank you to our moderator? I think you've done an incredibly skillful job, and I think you've made it creative and safe.